hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Revive Me Bro Games. This is your host, Silly Squirrel, and I am with my number 2 player and axe-wielding motherfucker, Master Rain.
What's up, everybody? How you doing?
Oh man, aren't you stoked for this episode, bro?
Dude, yeah, there's a lot of information that everybody needs to know in this episode, so definitely stick out to the very end of this.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. But before we get started, Master Rain, PSA, please.
Everybody, we are available in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. You can also find us on Instagram at Revive Me Bro Games and on Twitter at Revive Me Bro. We're even on Twitch, where me, Master Rain, will be playing all of Cyberpunk, and I mean all of it from start to finish. So please remember to subscribe on Twitch and on YouTube. Leave us a comment and hit us up on any one of our social networks. We would love to hear from all y'all, and your support means the world to us.
Thank you so much, Master Rain. Yes, and we will be streaming different games besides Cyberpunk. We're thinking about some old school games like, Dark Messiah or some Warhammer games. Like, we're still trying to figure out exactly what games we want to do, but definitely some old school stuff. Before we begin, let me introduce our guest and other best friend, bulletMAGNETT. bulletMAGNETT here is a good friend and a fellow gamer. He loves building PCs and plays lots of video games, even makes his own mods like in City Skyline. And when it comes to PC building, he has taught all about PC building and what to get, not to get, or not even try. So, when it comes to the topic at hand, we couldn't have asked for a better
sensei,
sensei, a better guest to talk to us about all the lovely dump we're gonna talk about. So, bulletMAGNETT, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Enjoying Cyberpunk at the moment, and
you and like
thank you for the flowers. Yeah.
yeah. You and like 50 gamers out there. If you're playing on PC, you're probably having a good time, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Well, glad to have you here with us, bulletMAGNETT. I am so excited to hear your input when and you and Ray going at it with all about the monitors and stuff like that. Before we begin, let's give our listeners a little bit of a taste of what type of games you like. I know I already mentioned City Skyline, but please tell us, what are your top 3 favorite games, and maybe tell us what you're playing right now.
In general wise, I like simulation games and RPGs. And first-person shooters sometimes, but if we gotta choose my top 3 games of all time, I will go first with The Witcher 3, second with GoldenEye, and 3 with SimCity 4.
Ooh, that's a very diverse list right there, man.
Well, those are really great games. Like, I have fond memories of playing them, so
yeah, seriously,
they deserve to be in this.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful list, and it's funny that you mentioned The Witcher 3 because I think that's gonna come in handy when we start talking about inevitably about Cyberpunk. So, but anyway, that's great, dude. I love some of those games too. I'm still trying to beat The Witcher 3. I already have like 100 hours in it, and I'm to side quests. I swear to God.
You need a couple 100 more hours, and you're gonna finish it.
I don't think I'll ever finish that game. Let alone complete it. Oh yeah, totally. Like, dude, I was a huge fan of SimCity. Is it SimCity 3000?
It's such a beautiful game, but wow.
3000 and 4000. 3000 was
yeah.
And
it really
4000 was 40.
I love the music. Oh. Dun 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 dun. Anyway, let's go with some R&B news.
News. Cyberpunk, it has issues. Damn. It was supposed to be the game of the year that releases and solved every gamer's issue for 2020, right? But it came out, and I'm sure everybody has seen on Facebook at this point, on some news channel, because literally mainstream news media is picking it up to be like, CD Projekt Red is going to get sued. Cyberpunk, terrible game, completely bugged out. And it's let's just face it, the fact is it's not a completely bugged out game. It's bugged out on hardware where it's not going to run it well. And unfortunately for a lot of people, for a lot of gamers, we're leaving a generation of a console and we're going into a new one. And when that happens, we always get games that just
Hmm.
do not run
Yeah.
well on the old hardware, and that's what's happening right now. Unfortunately, again, too, the majority of players right now are on those consoles, the PS4 and the base Xbox, which they're just not running well. But in my opinion, I've been having a pretty good time. Bullet Magnet, what have you got to say about the game so far?
So far for me, it's been running good. Of course, there's just minor bugs, but nothing game breaking. I'm not sure what exactly is the cause, but it's in general. I think it's just minor patches that will fix that. All in all, a great experience, very fun, very
And
addictive.
I believe, bulletMAGNETT, that you've mentioned that you've actually tried to break the game and you've been unsuccessful.
Yeah, so far I've been unsuccessful. I was trying to get the flying cars bug going, didn't work. I don't know. Simply, I think some people are just trying too hard, maybe, to break the game. Probably it's unpopular opinion, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
It's possible though. It's possible because I've only seen 5 bugs. I've seen the bug where Jackie, when he hands you the chip, accidentally hands you his gun. I've seen a bug where I was reloaded and it was a scene with Pan Am and I was accidentally sitting in the driver's seat while she was sitting in the driver's seat and I could like see like the character like animated like things and like inside of her. It was weird. It was a small thing. That's a simple fix. So thankfully, the only bugs that I've been seeing have been extremely minor. The game's been working fine. With the DLSS on, I can get a decent 60 to 70 frames. So thankfully, I've had no complaints. But unfortunately for our console players out there, it's just not been the same. And console players, you just have to remember too, your hardware, it's a little bit older compared to like a 2-year-old computer or even a 3-year-old computer at this point. So just keep that in mind, guys. Silly, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think with that in mind too, you have to think like people will also use the argument that's saying like, well, look at God of War, look at, The Last of Us. Like, how come those games run really well? Well, because they were built for the hardware, and you have to keep that in mind. Cyberpunk was being built for multiple different hardwares, not just this generation, but the next generation, right? And what have we learned throughout the years when it comes to like, developing games to different hardware? You're gonna have some bugs. I mean, it's
Hmm.
there's
They
there's there's a
happen.
precedent when it comes to this. I mean, I always think about like the Batman games for PC and when they came out, how broken they were. Well, because these games were made for consoles. So the moment that they needed to, well, besides other issues, right, like having another developer work on it, but it's like it's nothing new. Like we've seen this before, and
Like, let's be real. Like, the base PlayStation 4 has a hard time running Minecraft. Like, I
yeah,
play
yeah.
Minecraft on it and it crashes all the time and it has bugs. So it's like no one's complaining about that. I mean, yeah, you're looking at the graphics, it's simple. No, the game's actually doing a lot. Like, and it runs way better on PC. This is just the exact same situation,
But
unfortunately.
regardless, I think CD Project Red are going to come out this well. I think the patches are going to come in. People are going to start enjoying the game again, and they'll see that they're the wonderful game at hand. I mean, I always think of Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines, a game that is very broken, but thanks to a lot of fans and like a lot of patches that people have been making throughout the years, the game's runs really well on PC. And it's beloved by anyone. Actually, and right now that I just mentioned it, someone's going to be installing the game right now. So
Yeah, exactly. Which if you want to see how the game runs on PC, go subscribe to Revive Me Bro Gaming on YouTube, Revive Me Bro Games. Go to Twitch, subscribe to us as well because I'm gonna be streaming the whole thing there, and you can see the bugs that I've been having. And honestly, I've had more issues with Streamlabs OBS than I've had with the game. So
Think about, like, our fellow gamers need to think about that. These companies spends a lot of years and time working on these games. Some of them just work in one platform. It's PS4, PS5, Xbox. This game is coming on five. At least it was announced that it's going to run on five platforms. So that's indeed a great achievement, and it's very understandable with the amount of time
mhm,
they needed that it was going to be broken on one of them. And turns out
exactly.
it's broken on the older ones. So that's, like, it's expected, and they're even promising now that they're going to fix those issues and going to make it run. So people should be a little bit patient. I know you're, like, excited about the game, but sometimes stuff happen, right? Just let's try to trust them and see if they follow their word, and if they don't, well, then hate away.
That's when we kill them. That's when we go after them, right? That's how we go after them, like Silverhand's going after the corpos, right?
Yes, pretty much.
But not until then. Like, give them some time. All right, so that was our cyberpunk little bit, everybody. Goodness, we'll keep you up to date with what's going on with the game as bugs hopefully are solved and things like that. But moving on with the news, the Mandalorian season 2 has just ended, and Star Wars fans, for the most part around the world, are rejoicing. Without going into too many spoilers, if you like Star Wars even like 50%, you should go check it out. We should go watch the Mandalorian. But the reception from the Mandalorian has been so great, thankfully, that Disney Lucasfilm has decided to release a lot, and I mean a lot, of new Star Wars content. We got new shows coming out, we got new movies in the works, and we've all been hearing like leaks like here and there that this potentially is going to be happening. But I think after this last episode of the Mandalorian, a lot of people are really excited for what Disney could potentially do, because there are some people now who really care about Star Wars, who are really working in some things right now. But some of the things that they're going to release are going to be the Ahsoka Tano series, which seems like they're going to be working with the Veil of the Force, if you know what that is. There's a Bad Batch series, which I believe has to do with.
Ooh, I'm excited for
Yeah,
that
that
one.
has to do with the clone troopers, right? If I remember correctly, right? Yeah.
Yep. And it was in Rebels. I believe it's in
Yes.
Rebels and also Clone Wars that
Yeah.
they make appearances.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, which apparently they got Hayden Christensen to come back for that.
You
So
know that one I'm excited for because I really do think that Ewan McGregor deserved to like to really dive deep into the character more. Like he was phenomenal and he was one of the shining lights in the original prequels. It sounds fascinating, man, and I honestly can't wait. But you know what the Mandalorian did really good in season 2 was to set all of this up. You know,
that's it.
and
That's
and
it.
I know
Yeah.
I haven't watched the last 2 episodes. Yes, I'm a little behind. I had a weekend wedding, guys. Give me a break. Uh, I loved how like every episode of The Mandalorian, at least the ones I've seen so far, they either do the callback to season 1 or they brought in a character that we all love, like Ahsoka Tano, and you kind of felt like, okay, Disney, I see what you're doing. You know, you're kind of giving us little hints here, doing basically what Marvel was doing before they even like went all in with the cinematic universe, was to give hints and hints of like characters, right? Like, oh, that character's here, that character's there, and
Very
yeah,
interesting
so
that you say that.
I
'Cause
know,
the people
right?
who
Oh
worked
my
on that, not the
god.
person who did. The
So
person.
I'm looking forward to this new series universe of Star Wars, and if they keep the heart and the quality of the Mandalorian with all these shows, then dude, the next 5 years are going to be phenomenal.
Fantastic. Bullet Magnet, do you have anything to add to that?
I have yet to finish watching The Mandalorian, so I have no comments right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
One more thing that I want to talk about today in the news section. It's not necessarily news, but it's something that should be on everybody's radar a lot more. And that is the pro editions of the current consoles. And when I say current, I mean the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. I don't know what the heck Microsoft is going to call Xbox Series X, Triple X, 710, whatever. I don't know. They can deal with that. But we know it's going to be called PS5 Pro. So we'll refer to that generation of console as a PS5 Pro. There is news and there are hints and leaks and things like that out in the world that it seems like the PS5 Pro could potentially be here a lot sooner than we think. Like potentially we even within like 2 years. And considering how hard it is to grab even the PS5 right now, I mean the PS5 Pro coming out in 2 years. That's literally like when the stores are going to get restocked with the PlayStation 5. But apparently, some of the blueprints or the plans or whatever for the PlayStation 5 Pro that have leaked, it could potentially have 2 GPUs. And if it has 2 GPUs, I kind of think that it's worth the wait. Yes, the PlayStation 5 does feel next gen. It does have ray tracing graphics and it has an incredible SSD. Uh, the latest series of Nvidia graphics cards that came out, I think, are more spectacular. And if that's the case, and if the PlayStation 5 Pro has 2 GPUs, kind of like an SLI kind of formation that works better for gaming, then we could potentially have like the best console ever, you know, like a really powerful, just seriously powerful RTX, 60 frames, 4K, all of it turned on, right? That could potentially be coming out in a few years. So gamers, the question is for you. If you have the money to buy a PlayStation 5 and you really want the next gen experience, would you wait for the Pro? bulletMAGNETT, do you have like what would you say if you were in that position?
Well, especially with the fact that it's gonna prove to be a very good room heater, I'll definitely go with this PlayStation 5.
Dude, you stole the words out of my mouth. I'm like, man, it's like that thing's gonna be like flying, man.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
No,
Yeah.
but yes. It seems that it's a good, like, if the price is not too much, I think it's gonna be a, like, it's not too much difference between the PS5 and the PS Pro. I think it's gonna be worth the wait.
You know, like something I'd like to add to that is that I think as gamers, we need to learn a little bit of patience, and we need to understand that like when it comes to like games and hardware, like it's always gonna come out with some flaws, and like the more time passes, the more those flaws are gonna get ironed out. And so, you know, like I want to purchase a PS5, but I'm kind of waiting for it to be ironed out, and then I'll spend the money and not have to deal with any of the broken stuff that people have been talking about, especially with the games.
I agree with you on that.
I'll buy it. Yes, I might wait like another 6 months or maybe a little more before I do the purchase. And for the gamers that are telling me like, why the heck would you do that? Well, it's because like, dude, I got a backlog on my PS4 right now. Like, I got games to play. You know, like I do not need it. I do not need to like dive into like a PS5 and then be like, shit, I still need to beat Dead Stranding and this and that. It's like,
Also, if you think about it as a smart customer, like, if you buy the first batch, it's probably gonna be broken.
mhm.
Yep.
Just wait.
Yeah. Anyone remember the Red Ring of Death? Anyone? Raise your hands.
All hands get raised.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or-
yeah. It happens all the time. But I'm sure you have another one.
No. But with that, guys, that's
Oh, real quick,
Yeah.
before we go on, shout out to Kurt UKZ because he commented on my PlayStation 5 Pro question on Instagram, literally at the same time that I saw some of his news drop. So shout out to him on Instagram.
all right. And with this in mind, you guys, talking about the next generation, and we're gonna get it or not, there's another important question to ask ourselves. What TV or monitor am I gonna get in order to get the sweetest, delicious, smooth as butter visuals that I can?
Buttery, flaky crust.
So, Master Rain, bulletMAGNETT, you guys have some wonderful recommendations for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
could say that. Yes.
Bullet, yeah. If you wanna start us off, please go ahead.
My recommendation would be to consider your machine specs before choosing the monitor, and if you already have a machine, in the case of PCs, or if you're talking consoles, well, then consider the console performance capabilities, because if you go 8K, you're probably not gonna run it at 8K. It's gonna be downscale, and if you choose 4K, you're gonna lose frames. So that's one of the important considerations, in my opinion.
So like for example, can you give us like an example? I guess like if I have a PlayStation 5, right? You know, we do know that it does 60 frames a second. We do know that it does supposedly 4K, or in this case UHD, ray tracing and all that stuff. Like, you know, with so many TVs on the market and so many monitors, for the casual gamer that just wants to put this stuff on a TV, like what would be, I guess, some of the TVs to even consider?
So let me throw in a little bit of
Go.
information here when it comes to the TVs you're gonna get for your next gen console, because one thing that you need to all remember is that your console is not going to get past 120 frames per second, which a lot of 4K TVs are going to be either capped at 60 hertz or 120 hertz. So that does match up, right? But what you have to remember too is not all your games are going to be running super great as it is. So if you want to spend a little bit more money and try to get a TV like I don't know, like some sort of Sony or Samsung TV that has 120 hertz, you want to spend the money for it, but like none of the games that the PlayStation 5 that you have are actually going to run it that high. I think what's like the demo game that the PlayStation 5 has right now? It's the Astrobots or like something or other. I think that game actually can go up to 120 frames per second, but that's like not anything, like that's a
Well, and
very simple
it's a
game to
demo
run.
too. It's meant
So when you're
for
buying your
to to like fully. It's meant to
yeah,
be fully optimized and fully to fully take on the capabilities of the PS5 or the hardware that it's installed. And so in this case, like the demo, like it kind of
yeah,
reminds me of like the when you go to like Costco's, like the really really awesome demos that they have on their TVs. Well, it's like they were made specifically for like those TVs to look as good as possible. But that doesn't
for
necessarily
that.
mean that like let's say your
Yeah,
Spider-Man Miles Morales will look
yeah,
just as good. You know, I mean, not to say that the game looks horrible, but it's like, like some
exactly.
TVs will be better
No,
optimized for some of the whatever the games are like remade for. Like so you know what I mean? Yeah.
because here's the thing: if you have the money to throw it down, and you're just like, yeah, I want the best TV out there for my PlayStation 5, then like, why are you listening to us? Just go to Amazon and type in like the top of the money TV and buy that one, right? Just buy the one that has all the bells and whistles, right? But not all of us, obviously, not all gamers are like that. Not all gamers have the ability to drop like couple $1,000s on the most grand TV out there. So what you got to remember as a console gamer, or actually what you have to realize as a console gamer, is that frames matter. And I think that's something that console gamers haven't really thought about, is that frames matter. Now, uh, as a console gamer, this is coming me from like as a PC gamer now, right? Because now that I've seen the frames, I'm like, holy crap, there's a big difference. And we're gonna talk about the PC monitors real soon.
Yeah,
But
if I can add to that, and like me being more of a console player, like I've always loved playing in PCs, and but I was raised in consoles. I played mostly consoles. If anything, PC was mostly like your old school, like I've mentioned before, Age of Empires, Empire Earth, Counter Strike Source, blah 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 blah. Just like a few years ago, I have this gaming monitor that I got from a friend. I'm playing Counter Strike, and my frames are up to like 30 frames a second. And right now that I'm saying that for all our PC gamers right now, you're probably having a heart attack that I just said. You know?
they just threw up in their mouth.
Yeah. So I eventually found out that you can and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it's like you can up the number of hertz that the monitor can refresh, or the refresh rate, I think it's called, right?
Yes, it's the refresh rate. You can go down, but you cannot go above the cap they have. So if your monitor
Okay,
is 60
so
frames per second, it's the
mhm.
max. 60 hertz per second is gonna be 60 hertz per second. You can go 50, 40, 30.
So in my case, it was by default set to like the lowest of hertz. And so when I found out, especially me playing Counter Strike comp, you know, I found out that I can, increase the hertz of my monitor, which will increase the frame rate on my games. The moment I did that and I started playing Counter Strike again, night and day, like my performance was like reached exponential heights. Like I can go to any comp game and at least be confident that if the guy kills me is because I was a dumbass.
One important thing that I think you have to remember,
Which
though, for console gamers, frames in general, I don't think it's been a
It's a non-issue.
like
It's a
important
non-issue. It's
thing.
like as long as the game can
You
run,
know,
right?
and a fun fact about that is that during the N64 era games, I think the max frames per second we will see were 30 frames per second, and I think most of the game, if I remember correctly, I read somewhere that they were capped at around 20 frames per second. So that's really slow, like really, really
Well, yeah,
low.
when you go back like a
yeah,
GoldenEye, for example, or even a Perfect Dark, like,
wow,
well, I know
wow.
Perfect Dark was a little notorious that whenever you had like a lot of bots playing or like in a very heavy level, like your frames would drop to like 10, you know. But then like with GoldenEye, it was very smooth and steady until there were like a ton of explosions back then, and it was just like, oh, the game is just really busy, it's a lot to process. We
Yeah.
would forgive it, I guess.
Right, right. Which that is a good point, Bullet Magnet. It's like, the frames kind of don't really matter to console gamers, which my point here is that I think they should. I think they should matter for console gamers. But when you're looking at a TV, you don't care about the frames, you don't even need to worry about the hertz number, because you probably care more about just how the way the color looks, right? Now, as far as what color, how the TV looks itself, I think that a lot of people are like trying to get on OLEDs. I've heard like Jay's 2 cents talk about OLEDs. We've got a friend that's all about OLEDs. But bulletMAGNETT, you definitely have some information about OLEDs that like I didn't know until you started talking about it.
Well, it's not new technology, but it's ongoing, and it's developing, and it's
Yep.
expensive. And we have, I think I mentioned to you, Rain, that OLEDs have a limited lifetime, but I don't know. They are very expensive. They're not particularly new technology. I think I mentioned to you that they were first released in 2003 or 2004.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was
I
brand
didn't
new.
know.
My
I thought it
memory
was
serves me
new.
correctly, and they are expensive to produce. I think right now they're becoming a little bit more accessible. That's why they're pushing it. And yes, if you want like deep colors, deep blacks, deep brights, I think OLEDs is the way to go. But if you've been playing on LED and all the variations of LED, and for you it's fine, you don't need OLED. They eventually is gonna become more mainstream, and honestly, it's not gonna take any of the immersion out of the game or anything related to that.
You know, I kind of agree with that.
Interesting.
They're hyped, yeah, but
So yes, they're hype.
well, I mean, the
That's
hype
such a good-
comes
that's a
from
good way to put
basically
it,
the,
yeah.
the depth of colors, right? And I've definitely seen it side by side. So we have this friend of ours who has a really beautiful OLED TV, and he basically preaches to me all the time that what I need to get is a freaking OLED TV. So the blacks are true blacks. All the colors are exactly as they're supposed to look like, you know. But just like bulletMAGNETT mentioned right now, like even though it's very pretty, it's the experience was just the same. You know, it was enhanced a little bit, you know, but at the end of the day, like if the game's already good, it doesn't like as long as you have a somewhat good TV, like you know like 32 inch, it can be 55 inch, or LED and all that. Like the game's gonna, you know. I think in this case, yeah, the OLED might be a little too expensive.
That's a good point.
It's not a requirement either to enjoy the game. It's just, yeah,
Right,
you can,
right.
you can, yeah, if you can.
So this brings me to something that I think we need to talk about now is what does 4K mean? Because we hear 1080p, full HD, PCs on 2K, 4K, 8K. But what does all those numbers mean? We obviously know, oh, the higher the number, the better, right? But what exactly does it mean? First, one thing to know before we go on, you PlayStation users, you Xbox users out there, actually don't know about the Xbox off the top of my head right now, but I know for sure with the PlayStation 5, you cannot use it with the 2K monitor. And it sucks because you can get hella more performance out of that system if you could use it with a 2K monitor, but you can't.
Mhm.
So that brings us to the question.
I didn't know this. Is there any like specific reason to that?
No, and this is the interesting thing is that well, actually, yes, there's kind of a specific reason, and you can kind of say that, well, a PC monitor is for PCs. They don't have speakers, and consoles are meant for sitting on the couch and sitting back and putting your feet on the table and playing on a big TV, right? That's kind of how the argument goes right now. But honestly, I disagree because as a gamer, you kind of should be hoping for the best performance, right? The best performance of the game that's going to make it look best and make it run best without destroying your hardware. And I believe that 2K is like that kind of sweet spot right now. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. We'll debate that. But for you PlayStation 5 users out there, you can't even do 2K. It could be patched in the future if enough of you ask for it, but literally the console is able to do 2K. It's just not going to. So that brings us to the question. What is 1080p, what is full HD, and what is 4K? Because I think we need to answer those questions before we get into the debate between what the PC monitors do for PC versus like what a TV does for the PlayStation 5.
Well, let me start by saying that Full HD and 4K and 8K and 2K and HD are just names for the pixel resolution that you're gonna have on your monitor or TV. Um, in this case, 1080p refers to the vertical um, pixel count. So you have horizontal times vertical, and that means that you have to multiply the total to get a total amount of pixels. So, for example, 1080p has a total pixel count of 2 million pixels, millions, 2 million pixels, a little bit more. But if you go 4K, you have 8,002,200 pixels. And then if you go 8K, you got 33 millions. So that means that your game is gonna run worse and worse and worse if it cannot run on 1080p well, because you have to process and calculate more operations per second per frame to display on all those pixels. You have to update all those pixels every frame 60 times a second, or 120 times you're on 120 hertz. Cyberpunk is a very complex game. There's a lot going on behind the scenes and on screen, and the CPU has to process all the eye candy that you see, but also the minor stuff that the GPU requires. So it's gonna need all that time to process and display that one frame, and it also needs to process it on the screen. So the more pixels is gonna take more time to render one frame. So if it takes more time to render one frame, then your frame rate is slower.
Hmm.
So
And if to add to that, you know how the Miles Morales games has a ray tracing mode and a non ray tracing mode. I know there's a game for it. It's a performance mode,
Oh
and
yes, please explain that.
so when you do
Yeah.
performance mode, you're basically, you're upping the performance to 60 frames, but you're bringing down, like you turn off the ray tracing plus the resolution goes down. The reason it's called performance is because you're basically telling the PS5 that you're going to process less pixels per second, which when you do that, when you switch to a ray tracing mode, it goes down to 30 frames. I know that there's just a patch that just came out, but that's the reason why, like, when you go back and forth between the two, it's like the 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 software is telling the hardware like how much work to do. Some of that process has to be cut in half or reduced in order to give you what you expect. So it's really important to like keep in mind, like, only because it says it's 8K doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna run flawlessly in 8K.
let me
Yeah,
take let me pitch in on that. Getting Cyberpunk into the scene again, right?
and it's what you guys are
Because
playing
it's the
too.
hot
So
game.
yeah.
Right now, Nvidia uses DLSS for the ray tracing and has several options for performance, quality, and all of that. What they're doing is that they're rendering all the details, the ray tracing and all that on 720p, and then with the, I think even less, a lot less. But they have the AI cores, well, the tensor cores. What they do is that they reconstruct the image and then they display it at the resolution that you selected. So not even the actual GPUs that we have today can render full HD with ray tracing, like true full
That
HD.
is a really good point. That is a really good point. I have only been playing the game with DLSS on. I actually I actually will have very poor frames if I try to turn those that
Yeah, it's
the
really,
RTX. If I
yeah.
turn it on without the DLSS, forget about
Ray
it. The
tracing is
game's at
expensive.
15 frames. 20 frames. Yeah. Yeah. But and that's literally and it's expensive. And now I have a 2000 series, 20 series card. I have a 2080 Super. It's not the top of the line anymore, but it's still a pretty decent card, right? It
It'll be fine for 5 years,
right. And
dude.
right, and my card does have dedicated ray tracing cores. They're better in the 30,000 series, but this is my performance, right? This is where I'm at, right? But I'm still running the game without bugs. Is another point to make, right? It's another point to make.
Mhm.
With the DLSS and all that kind of stuff, it's fine. But yes, without the DLSS on, that thing does run like a like a slideshow.
Because if you think about it, like, can you run Cyberpunk at 8K?
Yeah,
Absolutely. It
yeah.
is.
That's
It is.
uh, 33 million pixels per frame at 60 frames per second. Take that. Do the math on that.
Linus Tech Tips has a video of him playing at 8K.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it, but it's one of those things that's like, ain't nobody gonna do that. Which is, dude, that brings me back to the PlayStation 5 advertising 8K on the box. Ain't nobody with an 8K
It's
screen or monitor or
it's
whatever.
buzzwords. It's
Nobody's playing at
buzzwords.
8K.
It's yeah. It's like
Buzzword
you know what
hype.
I love. It's like back in
Yeah.
the day, like they would say like the movie's in 4K, but in reality it was UHD, which isn't true 4K. It's a slightly
Uh huh.
downscaled 4K. What do you call it? Like resolution. So even like, but then of course that's
Yeah.
not gonna sell. Get 3.8K. Yeah, you know, it's 4K. It just sounds nice. It's a nice buzzword. People see that and they'll be like, yes, I'm getting high res. I'm getting a ultimate picture, which you know, at the end of the day, it's like how is it that you enjoy your content, you know, and your games. Hence why we're doing this episode, right? It's like we're letting you know what these words mean and what exactly it is that the games can do. Do you really need this? Is this important to you? Do you have the money, or you are like a fuck it, just turn on my credit card guy, you know, you know.
Which, like, my point earlier, again, I said earlier, was console players, I think you guys need to start considering frames in your games because it makes a massive difference. At least to me, you know, OLED versus LED may not break immersion, but to me, 100 frames per second versus 30 does. 60 and 70 versus 20 to 30 breaks immersion for me now. But that's after seeing what the higher frames can do. So that's one thing that I would say to console players: go find like what faster frames look like. Just go see it one time, and then form an opinion after that. Because you can go on video, you can go on YouTube and be like, oh, okay, they're comparing 30, 60, 120, 240 frames. But unless your monitor can do 240 frames, you're not going to see the difference. So now this brings me to the conversation of the PC monitors. To you PC gamers out there, and a lot of PC gamers, they do a lot of research. So I know a lot of PC gamers out there have heard a lot about this. But for you console gamers who are potentially thinking about getting a PC, listen up because this is extremely important for you. So my first question here would be, bulletMAGNETT. Would you prefer, and I think I know how you're going to answer this, but 4K. How do you feel about 4K on the PS5, and how do you feel about 4K on the PC?
Well, I'm a practical man, dude. I'd rather have a 1080p monitor running my game at 120 frames per second or 60 frames per second than having a 4K monitor running at 30 frames per second. That's just like my base comparison, right? So taking into account that most monitors and well most TVs right now are 4K, I think if you're a console gamer, you're gonna have a hard time finding a 1080p monitor. So go with the 4K because that's what's mainstream and available, right? But if you're on PC, then you have more options. So that will depend on your hardware. If you have the GPU to pull it off at 4K, go ahead. But if you don't, then get something that you video card can support, can handle, and go with that. You can buy a big monitor, or you can go 4K and downscale to 1080p, and it will look good.
To everybody listening, that is probably the majority, like how the majority of console, sorry, that's how the majority of PC players probably feel. It's like, if you're on a console, you got 4K. Go with your budget. Go with whatever fits your room and go with your budget. If you have the money for OLED, like good for you. But you're limited to literally 4K TVs. That's your choice. But if you're on PC, I think my sweet spot of gaming is at 2K, which is 140, 1440p. I prefer 2K gaming at about 60 frames. That's my sweet spot because I feel like you're getting close enough to 4K where it looks really good, but you're still getting fast frames and you're not dropping below. And talk about like not dropping below 60 frames at all, right? Like 60 frames is literally like that's it. We're not going past that. I think that's like my sweet spot. And that feels next gen to me, right? It's not 4K, but every single game that I'm going to play is going to be at least 60 frames, if not 144 frames, which is what my monitor can do. Now, playing at 144 frames, Call of Duty, let me tell you, I was really good. I was really shocked at how good I was compared to playing it on console. I was even telling my brother-in-law, like, I can't even believe like how well I'm playing, like with the freaking single shot rifle, the marksman rifle. I was just like literally like turning around like through like 120 degrees, like 360 degree, like whatever, like shooting people in the face, and I'm like, I can't even believe it. But it's not only the mouse, but it was the smoothness of the monitor, because I don't feel like my eyes are trying to like decipher what's going on the screen. It's like it could see it.
Yeah, and like that's funny you mentioned that because it's like the moment like crossplay became a thing, like everyone was gonna like the usual argument was like, oh no, PC gamers are gonna do better because they have mouse and keyboard. Like that was like the first thing that people came to mind. It's like not necessarily,
Not necessarily.
although like yes, with first person shooters, like mouse and keyboard is the de facto way of playing, in my opinion. It's the refresh rate and the monitors that help players get better. Like I gave you the example of myself playing Counter Strike. Like I got better just because I was able to actually configure my monitor to run the game at 120 frames a second. Like it's ridiculous. But if you think about it, just simplistic terms, it's you're basically getting more frames, which equals to more information being processed and that you can see.
Yeah, pitching in on that, also, you have to remember, like, in the perfect world, everybody will have a ping of 0 milliseconds, right?
Exactly.
So you have that. But having a monitor that it's displaying 120 frames per second, it's gonna give you an advantage for sure. And then, of course, you have to have the GPU and computer to render at that frames. But the experience is gonna change. For example, if you are not playing competitive games, so 60 frames is perfectly fine. So if you're like zero competitive, like no high high stakes, twitchy kind of competition games, 60 frames per second is more than enough. Like in the end,
it's a base level.
It's a base level. Lower than that, it's gonna start feeling like weird. It works for movies, but not like I think movies.
Well,
Like,
movies
you know
run
more
at
about that,
24
but
frames. Yeah.
movies
So
is
and that's
24, right?
standard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it feels smooth. But that's because of the artistic kind of way of works. But in PC, that's like in computer games, video games in general, doesn't work because you have to. Yeah, you're interacting, so you feel the lag, and like there's a disconnect. And I think also people will get motion sick because of it. I remember that happening. Um, so yeah, I mean, you're definitely gonna have an advantage, but you also have an advantage if you have a better ping in your competitive games. But yes, like
It's a
playing.
combination of a lot of different things, like your monitor will open up options, you know, but it's like, just like a Bullet and Ray said, it's like, but if your hardware is not up to par, like it doesn't matter if you have a good monitor. It's only going to be able to read what your hardware can read. So it's and all this is really fascinating because it's like, again, like it's not stuff that you really think of, but you have to bring it up because it's the more you're
Right.
informed, the better
We
you
have to bring it
the
up.
more of a smarter purchase you'll be able to do. So instead of just buying the latest 8K TV, but like
Yeah.
the fine print will probably
Right.
let you know if is it the optimal TV for what you're trying to
Good
do.
point.
At the end of
That's
the
a
day,
really
I
good
think
point.
at the end of the day, your game experience is gonna change based on the game, and yes, more frames is gonna look more fluid. It's gonna slide like you're gonna slide on the frames like if you're flying. I don't know, but then some games don't even need it. So it depends. It's gonna depend on the game that you're gonna play. Also, there's a moment that you have to do the trade-off, like Ray mentioned. Like you either want like super graphics or better performance, like a balance between performance and graphics, especially if you don't have the
Yeah,
budget, right?
yeah.
Because if you have the budget for a 3090
Yeah.
GTX, you shouldn't be listening to this because you can buy like top of the line and
Must, yeah.
Yeah, go play that. Go play the
Yeah.
3090. My God.
you're buying top of the line. You don't need advice for that kind of stuff. But if you need to figure out, like, if you need to figure out a good trade-off, then of course. Try to find a middle ground that works for your computer and the capabilities of your console and your PC.
Yeah.
And go for the monitor, because the size of the monitor, like the physical size, doesn't matter on the resolution. People might not know that. So you can buy a, I don't know, 40-inch 1080p, and if you play it at a distance, it's gonna look fine.
Compare that to your hardware being at a PlayStation or an Xbox or a PC, and see what works best. Look, notice that I'm not saying Nintendo, because Nintendo can give a flying fuck about it. So, like, for them, it's like 1080, 30 frames. Yay. Like, that's it, So,
720p, that's our 4K.
Yeah.
Let's
So,
go.
like, Nintendo, and the funny thing is, like, Nintendo, it's not like you're going to go play Mario Party comp, Like, you're playing that with your friends.
Right.
You're playing that on the couch. You're playing that online. It doesn't matter. So, if you have a Nintendo Switch, you're fine.
You're fine, dude. You're in your
Yeah,
own league of gaming. You're doing something that none of the other consoles or whatever are doing.
Yeah, which is you playing Mario Kart on your toilet.
But it's an awesome experience.
I love it. I mean, shit, man. Like, last night I was on my way back home from my sister's wedding. Like, I was playing on my Switch, the whole ride. I could give zero shits about like frame rate for like a Switch, It's like Zelda runs smooth.
Yeah, that's true.
But to give Nintendo some credit, there's something to be said on how they like definitely keep things a little more simple.
They kiss it. They kiss it.
Yeah,
they keep
basically.
It simple,
so
stupid.
it's like your Legend of Zeldas or your Mario Karts. Like, Nintendo knows that they don't need to do that, because you're still gonna play it and you're still gonna love it.
Yeah, I think you Switch owners out there are gonna be like, frames.
Hence
What?
the experience.
But if you get into gaming, it's something that I think you need to learn about. Which what I want to also add, like, if you have felt like you have learned a lot about this conversation and you just want to start learning more, because maybe you're a console gamer like I was early in the year, who got into PC gaming. It was a lot of learning and a lot of questions and a lot of back and forth, right? But it's worth it. At the end of the day, it really is worth it. And you can figure out something perfect for your budget. And if you have a lot of money, go for it. But if you have a budget, there's ways to work around your budget. So if you guys really felt like you got a lot out of this episode, please let us know on Instagram, on YouTube, like anywhere. Hit us up on anywhere, on Twitter, on Facebook, because we want to know. We will do more PC talks. We will do more PC gaming talks, so you guys can be more informed as to what to do. Heck, we'll even talk about like how to build a computer from like top to bottom and what parts you need to figure out and stuff like that.
My final recommendation: don't get absorbed by the hype and go deep in the rabbit hole of technology and specs, because it's gonna be fun. But also, you're gonna be informed as a computer enthusiast or technology enthusiast. You're gonna be able to understand why or why not is your game performing the way you want it, and then you're gonna be more chill too when you're playing your games and seeing that it's like maybe a little bit less frames or more frames or high resolution or lower resolution, and you won't be worried too much about that anymore. So you won't be like, why isn't my game, why is it broken, why is that? Simply, you already know what's going on. You have the power in your hands now to decide how you want to play it.
Exactly. And I think that's I couldn't agree more. If you were expecting for us to give you like a list of TVs or monitors to buy, that's not necessarily what we're trying to do. Just like bulletMAGNETT said, it's like is to learn and get informed of why things work a certain way. So it's like, especially nowadays with the buzzwords of 4K, ray tracing, 8K, unlocked frames, blah, 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 blah. Like, what does all those things mean, and how does that change your experience? And just like Ray mentioned with Modern Warfare, now you might understand why is that PC players have an edge. It's not because they're shooting with you with mouse and keyboard,
and it's not that they're better.
It's not that they're better either. It's just that they can see more because their hardware is able to process things faster. So at the end of the day, it's like the more you know about your TVs, the more you'll be able to make an educated purchase, that will be well optimized for what you have. And I think that's what's important. Like, again, like we I know we kind of sort of bash on Nintendo now and then, but they know exactly who they're selling to.
Listen, gamers, knowledge is power. And I hope that we gave you a lot of power today with this episode, because that's what we want to do, you know? And it kind of feels like the gaming community today honestly kind of lacks some of that knowledge power. But more and more gamers are getting informed. And as more gamers are informed, literally all studios will make better games, and we can hold everybody to a higher standard with our gaming.
Mhm. And I want to thank bulletMAGNETT for joining us here today. This has been a phenomenal
Dude,
conversation.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Of course, man. We're looking forward to having you on on more episodes. Maybe we can have you on one of our our reviews. You know, like we had our good friend Luis.
That would be cool.
You know, and yeah, guys, like that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and now on Twitch. You know, and watch our Master Rain beat Cyberpunk. I think he's on episode 10, 11. And then who knows? Maybe you'll convince yourself that, you know, this game ain't crap like everyone's been talking about. You know?
Listen, I cannot believe the facial expressions in the game. Oh my god, like there are some really good facial and the details. All right,
Yeah,
I'll stop
exactly.
talking about it. Go watch
Yeah,
my stream.
go
Go
watch
watch,
the
my
stream.
stream.
Yeah.
You'll see what
They're
I
really
mean.
good.
Remember
You'll see
to
what I
leave
mean.
us a comment and subscribe. And also, we are looking forward to our next review episode. Woo! You know, I think
Oh,
if
I'm
you guys
excited
have been
about that one.
listening, you might have an idea of what we're going to talk about. But so this is Silly, Master Rain, and Bullet signing out.
See you guys. Hope the information was useful, and happy gaming as always.
Take care, you guys. Remember, never let your teammates die. And if they do, you better freaking revive them.
Yeah, don't be that guy. Bye.
See ya.